About to start.
I've just texted her and emailed her. So.
Okay.
Does that mean that Liam's not listening to us?
There.
I don't know what that means. Oh, Kristine's here now.
The headset's not working? Sorry, I'm just
no reaction there. Maybe you'll have to send him a text that lets him. I don't. Are you hearing us, Liam?
There's Kristine.
Okay, let's go forward here. Hi, Kristine. We're all set to go.
Hi, I'm sorry. Am I late?
No,
You're fine.
Oh, sorry. I just came from another meeting.
That's no problem.
you're 4 minutes early.
Okay, so anyway, approval of agenda point 1, introduction of late items. Allison, you provided an email. Did you want to include that?
No, that was for the closed meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have any further late items to be included?
You're talking about the one I just sent, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, and hearing none.
Oh, there was one
hang on.
introduction.
Sorry.
Yeah, Steph had something I think that she sent out.
Financials.
Yeah.
Sure. Steph, what?
Financials for CAWES were sent
Yes.
by
She
email.
provided some additional information more current than what was provided previously. Anyway,
Lori says something, Fred?
I was saying, so move the approval agenda with the late items.
thank you. To a seconder?
Second.
Michael, all in favor? Okay, and all in favor. Thank you. We've been provided with minutes, draft minutes from our meeting of October 28th. You all have had a chance to review those, and I will request, is there any questions or comments before we vote? Hearing none. I just had one word to add, Steph, on the resolution. Just a second here.
Which page, Fred?
I'm coming to her. Okay, here we go. Page, well, it says 5 of 36 at the bottom, but, and it's in the middle where it says, whereas a result projected depleted capital reserves will be insufficient to meet expected capital funding requirements in that period, if additional sources are not identified. And I thought we had the word funding sources.
Okay.
That was the only item I had.
And on my screen, there's a little, looks like a comment has made its way onto the agenda, onto the minute.
Where?
Second whereas is a run-on sentence, needs some work.
Yeah, I think we addressed that in the, that was
But
early on.
that's showing up when I open up agenda notes, so.
There's something funny going on with track changes in this organization.
Yeah. So just to note the staff to make sure that
Mine doesn't have that, yeah.
on the council
So
website.
Fred's doesn't have it and yours does. Something funny going on.
Yeah, mine is, we addressed that by making adjustments to the sentences.
Okay, I'll make a note to check on track changes.
Do we need to have any further on that?
I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second.
Okay,
Yeah.
Rob, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay. Thank you, that's passed. Yeah, maybe you can clarify with Allison, because there was a run-on sentence and we made an extra sentence out of it.
We did.
No, that isn't, it's the actual comment is showing up on my screen as part of the minutes.
That's weird, because it's certainly not on mine.
And I'm on an iPad. I don't know about everybody else.
I'm just, I made a copy off my computer, but I didn't see it before.
But I've opened it up in agenda notes. You've opened your whole thing up as a one big PDF. So who
Yeah.
knows?
Okay, so we're
I
fine
love
with that.
computers these days. They're a pain in the butt sometimes.
Okay, let's move on now. So point 3, public comments, anything?
So we have Kim Sinclair here from CAWES. I think she's prepared to answer questions when that section of the agenda comes along.
Thank you.
I'm not, okay.
Welcome, Kristine. And actually, that's our next point. Is delegations, and it's point 4.1, which is the Bowen Island Municipality 2020 audit plan. And Kristine, again, welcome. If you have anything that you'd like to advise us of, we've had a chance to review the information you've provided. And it turns out that everybody that's here was on the committee last year. So I think we're pretty familiar with the process and with the approach that you take as an organization.
Yes.
But if there's anything that you
Liam,
feel that you want to
Yes.
highlight because of changes or things that are significant, we'd appreciate that. Raj?
Fred, I was just going to maybe ask you to introduce Kristine to Liam. She hasn't met Liam yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nice to meet you, Liam. I heard all
Liam,
about
our
you,
new
but
CAO. Liam,
Hi,
Kristine
Kristine.
is a partner with BDO,
Introduce you. Yeah.
heads the
She
audit.
doesn't look like a partner today. She's in sweats.
Sure you do. Yeah, you look great. Thanks. Nice to meet you, Kristine.
Nice to meet you. I have been doing the audit, I think now for 6 years. So I took over from Bill Cox at that time. So I'm
Okay.
happy to be here again. As Fred mentioned, the approach has not changed significantly. So I will, as you said, I will assume everybody's read it. I would say our biggest concerns have been discussing with municipalities the impact of COVID, if any. I would say that the initial reaction was that the sky was falling and there was going to be huge challenges, but we found that people are able to execute and have been executing quite well. We did have a very detailed meeting with IFA just to go through all the specific items, in particular some of the capital projects, capital grants. I have heard of another grant since then. I'm not sure if Bowen is receiving it. I think it's called the Safe Start Grant. I'm not sure.
The restart.
Restart grant?
Yeah.
So you have received some on that?
No, I don't think any. We've got a letter, but I don't think it's been received in our accounts. But I told
You're
the
expecting some?
EFTs are to come
Okay.
at any point in time.
1.2 million, Kristine.
Okay, perfect. The reason that has caused us some angst or concern is part of the letter. I understand I received a copy from somebody else, is that it actually requires you to put a schedule in your statements, in your notes to your statements. So we are having discussions with the ministry, or essentially saying that unless you do additional procedures, it's going to be an unaudited schedule. So we're having discussions with them just to make sure that we're not doing a whole bunch of extra work for one specific grant, essentially. So I just heard about that after the discussion we had with IFA. So other than that, there's no significant changes to the audit plan. The asset retirement obligations due to COVID have been pushed back a year, the implementation date. So that gives management a little bit more time to work on that. Last year was IFA's first year with us helping us. So we've chatted about what worked well, what didn't work well, and where we can improve. We are continuing to do all our audits fully remote, have been since the middle of March. So that will continue on. We have good tools and it's working quite well. So I much better than I think people would have assumed it could have gone. And so I don't see a problem with that. But so that was just sort of a high level overview. I'm happy to walk through the report, but I think what I'm hearing is you've all read it and you've all been here last year, so you don't need me to walk through it. Maybe just take questions.
Sure. Any questions? Michael?
Kristine, hi, Michael here.
Hi.
Welcome back. Kristine, this, I think, I'm not counting, but I think this is the 6th time I've heard your melodious voice going through this routine. And if I could just ask the highest level questions, frankly, the audits have gone, past records attest to this smoothly and well, and it would seem this is not an exception. Is there any point of difference other than COVID that sticks out as one particularly highlight point that you might want to draw to our attention? Or if and I'm not looking for one,
yeah.
Or if you say, no, Michael, basically it's excluding COVID, it is the same, very much the same routine report and routine set of issues that I've dealt with for the last 6 years. So at the highest.
The only other thing I would highlight would be the capital projects, the water project, community center, health center. Just keeping an eye on those projects and any associated funding with those projects would be sort of my next biggest, just the activity going on right now with those would be at the high level.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further? Yours?
Allison's go.
So in relationship to your last comment, when you're looking at projects, will you be looking at our policies to make sure that we're adhering to our policies or that they have adequate set points, controls in them? Is that something you do?
You mean in terms of identifying contractors or Is it, am
Just
I
our
understanding?
overall management of financial issues.
I don't say that we normally do as part of the routine audit. It's definitely something we can look at if you're concerned about it. We're usually looking at the overall budget and whether you're staying on top and if you're having any significant change orders, whether they're approved properly. That is a bit beyond where our typical is, but it is something we can look at if you like.
Well, let me think about it, and
Okay.
we need to discuss it as a finance advisory committee, obviously,
Yeah.
as to whether there is something there.
I know from a procurement point of view, we were looking at that in the past, but we kept finding that the policy was being overridden with sort of local contractors in many cases. So it was sort of, we were doing a test that we knew was going to fail in most cases.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I mean, that was approved by council, or the committee, which was good, but it was not necessarily always within the original intent.
I guess my question is relates then, I'm noting there's a large number of, well, not a large number, but there are some significant contracts coming down the pike. And you said you address procurement. Is that is part of the existing process?
Typically, I would use, and it's actually one of our, I wouldn't say normal audit procedures, it's what we usually call our public perception procedures. I usually am, one of the things we would look at when there's a lot of capital is, are you actually doing an RFP when you should? If your threshold is to do an RFP, have you done an RFP and gone through that process with big capital items like this? So it's not necessarily something you have to do in a financial statement audit, but given the public sector, we tend to look at those types of things.
Thank you. Okay. Allison and then Liam.
Kristine, in the
Sure.
past, there's been a standard question about, well, for the audit committee or whatever to advise if they're aware of any issues or something, but I
Yeah.
can't find it again.
Oh, I don't know if I can find the page right now. And sometimes I have discussion at year end, but I'll remind everybody that there is the responsibility of the committee. If there's anything that is fraud or potential fraud or something that causes you concern, that you can bring it to my attention and we would dig into it. Or if there is anything that you're aware, that you can bring it to my attention now so that we can review it and make sure that there's nothing. And no relationships, no related party type relationships that I should be aware of as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good point, Allison. Liam?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. And thanks, Kristine, for walking us through this today. Really appreciate it.
Except I didn't walk you through it.
Well, you know.
Everybody else is
I mean.
bored of hearing me do this spiel.
Right, not me.
Yes, I apologize.
So, but I did want to get clarity on what we were just talking about, because
Sure.
my understanding of the audit the audit plan and is that it is more about a financial compliance audit, not a performance audit. And so I'm just not opposed to, I've been through a lot of performance audits and compliance audits and not opposed to it, but I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm understanding the scope of what we're talking about.
You totally have it right. And that's why I said it's not necessarily required. But what we do, because our team really focuses on municipal audits, we typically do a couple additional procedures. And one of those, when there is a lot of capital, would be something like ensuring that RFPs are done. So it's something that we choose the procedures, and that would be something that I could choose in this case, given their significant capital.
Right.
And
Okay.
we treat them as what I would call value-added procedures, not necessarily required procedures. Because you're right, it's not necessary.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Kristine? Hearing none, our recommendation, or as per 4.1b, is that the Financial Advisory Committee receive the audit planning letter dated November 6, 2020 from BDO for information. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
So moved.
Michael, Allison, thank you. All in favor? Right. Good. Thank you. We passed on that. And thank you very much, Kristine.
Like me to sign off? Nothing else that you need me to stay for?
I think we're okay.
Sure, you want to stay for 2 hours and talk?
But if you want,
I'll take the Coles notes or the minutes. Thank you.
just for the sheer enjoyment of the experience. Yeah.
You guys have a good night. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kristine. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on now to business arising from the minutes, point 5. 5.1, which we kind of got started at the last meeting, and we deferred pending receipt of additional financial information. And there was 2 rounds of information that were provided, including the most recent financial information from CAWES. And so I think at this point, Raj, you've pretty much gone through everything up to this point. I mean, I think everybody's had a chance, hopefully, to see the updated financials.
I've basically looked through their financials. There seemed to be a concern last time, or committee was wanting confirmation that most of the costs were going to the program. And from looking at their financials, it appears that almost all funding is going towards their programs. I had a further conversation with Bonnie Brokenshire, our manager of bylaws, and she's expressed that service that CAWES provides is valuable to the municipality, and that without this service, the municipality would likely be required to engage a contractor to address the feral cat population on the island. So I just wanted to add those remarks in addition to what we had talked about previously.
Thank you. And we note that it is an item that was budgeted for, included in the budget for 2020 as well. So I'll open it up for any questions or further discussion. Allison?
We don't have a budget for 2021, or, I mean, is this going to be a 2020 grant or a 2021
I
grant?
think it's 4 years, isn't it? Oh, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, it would be a multi-year core funding grant, and we did put core funding for this provision in the 2020 budget, so that would carry forward to 2021, to future years, Allison.
Yeah, and I believe the initial package of information that was provided at the last meeting included projections for, I think, the next 4 or 5.
So I guess my question was just for clarity, because I haven't, it's kind of hard to open up last minutes and look at this year's agenda notes at the same time on the same screen. If we granted this would go to council and council granted it. Would it be paid to CAWES in 2020 fiscal, or would the first payment be 2021?
It would be in 2020. The first payment would be for 2020 in 2020.
Okay, and I guess the other was the budget information we got didn't contemplate an executive director. So, and I guess that relates to the question about, is the money is certainly gone for programs in all their past financials. Will it continue in the future? Because there was no budget line for an executive director.
I can get back to you on an answer. I believe everything, or we can ask Kim, but I believe everything would go to their programming costs, is my understanding from Bonnie.
I mean, we do have a budget that shows there are significant budget operating costs that are so with their programs. I mean, maybe it could be clear, and I don't expect anybody for the sake of about 4,000 per year following up in detail, but just put within the approval or the recommendation to council that the expectation is that the monies are used towards program costs, and leave it at that. In case
I would agree to that.
Joyce?
Well, the budget that we received in our main package, in every year, the expenses are over the projected funding sources, and the projected funding sources include $4,000 per year from the municipality. And that worries me, that, it's a significant overage considering the budget. And is $4,000 going to turn out to be not enough? Or like in the original application, they said that receiving the $4,000 would allow them to not focus so much on fundraising, but everybody has to have a balanced budget. And, they don't seem to have a huge amount in reserve anywhere that they can draw from. So that concerns me. That said, I have to say, I'm not sure why Finance Advisory Committee is even receiving this application. Staff has recommended that it be approved. The policy says that it's council that makes the decision. The budget has already been provided for. And so, I don't understand why we have received the applications for any of these grants for multi-year funding. So I'd like to say that.
Thanks, Joyce. Raj?
The reason I had this had brought this forward to the Finance Advisory Committee is in the past, the Finance Advisory Committee has made a recommendation on the other multi-year funding applications. And so that was the only reason I brought it forward to the Finance Advisory Committee, was more of a courtesy, and I guess so you had complete information on community grants. Otherwise, yeah, my initial thoughts had been to take it straight to council as well.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, let's go quickly make a comment. I think previously when we looked at it, the items in question had not been budgeted for. Where this item was already within the budget. So that's just my one sort of comment. Joyce?
I agree. Like the 2 initial grants that were made did not come to Finance Advisory Committee, and that was for the Arts Council, or for the Hearth, and for the museum. And it was the subsequent 2 for which there wasn't a budget that it came to Finance Advisory Committee, which was Birch Housing Society and Tourism.
So as a result of that, Raj, I appreciate the thoughts you've had about bringing it to the committee, but it appears it probably is not something that the committee needs to necessarily deal with. So do we just, I guess, what's the way to approach it? Just request it go back to council for their approval?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Can you say you don't object?
We don't object, but I mean, I
Yeah.
sort of think I think council has already, in essence, made a conditional, taken a conditional position based on its initial, on the budget approval.
I mean, you could say that you don't have any comment or further comment on it.
I think that's nice. Sure.
That's worth lots. Good.
That's very good. Yes, we're happy. I'm happy with that.
What
Anybody
is
else?
that the Finance Advisory Committee got nothing to say?
Nothing to
There's
say.
no comment. That's unusual. Brad, I just got a question. I'm looking at the recommendation that was in the agenda that recommend that council directs it. No, it's okay. I missed the word that council. Sorry.
So just say the Finance Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to award the funding. Just
What I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that some of the finance committee members don't feel entirely comfortable making a recommendation or not, and so perhaps it's that the finance advisory committee at this point has no comment on the request for funding.
Yeah, I mean, we can add to that if you want to, noting that it's already included within the budget.
we need, use your whereases.
Well, anyway, noting it's already included within the budget for 2020, and management has indicated that it meets their the parameters or requirements of the program. So I think that kind of clarifies it. Is that a whereas, or is it just a?
I can make it to whereas. Management has indicated. Sorry, what was that, Fred?
Well, that it meets the
Program.
parameters for this level of financing, or the program, whatever it's called, and it's already included in the 2020 budget.
Okay. Therefore, be resolved. Okay, so whereas the multi-year core funding, we call it an item.
Where is the request for multi-year core funding
Okay.
from CAWES? So where is the request for multi-year core funding from CAWES? Probably spell it out.
Yep.
Meets the criteria.
What's the name? There's a name for the program, right?
It's the criteria.
Meets the program criteria and has been identified in the budget.
In the 2020 to 2025, or no?
It's in the 2020 budget at this.
So far at the 2020 budget.
2020 budget, okay. And whereas management has approved or indicated the program is in alignment with.
No, I don't think they approve it. I think what they do
No.
is management advises that it meets the requirements of the multi-year core funding program, or whatever it's called, and that the amounts requested are within the current 2020 budget.
Therefore, it be resolved that the Finance Advisory Committee has no comment on the CAWES request for funding.
I'll approve that. I mean, I'll move that.
Okay, Joyce, seconder. Michael, thank you. All in favor?
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that's, I think, sort of dealt with.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to point 6, which is updates. And this is for Raj, the asset management plan update 6.1. We had a significantly large file provided to us showing what's the background for this. And so Raj, please provide your comments.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and can you guys see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to try and summarize this in 10 minutes. So there's a lot of information in that draft report on asset management that was distributed. But in the summer and fall of 2019, the municipality engaged David Albright of Asset Insights to help us develop our asset management plan. So David's a ISO 55001 certified asset management trainer. He's got designations under the Institute of Asset Management and through AMC. He's also a NAMS asset planner, and he's a certified change manager. He's helped a number of municipalities in BC in asset management planning over the past 10 years, including the City of Vancouver, Burnaby, District of North Vancouver, Grand Prairie, Mission, Cranbrook, Coquitlam, and Squamish. So a copy of the draft asset management plan developed in 2019 was based on information that was gathered from various sources and detailed meetings that David held with key staff members or managers. And that report was attached to the agenda. So in summary, the work done focused on engineered assets, which are built assets. And BIM's assets were summarized into 9 asset classes. Essentially into buildings and contents, fleet, IT, sanitary, storm, transportation, water, parks, recreation. And he also included a provision for pending assets, which essentially the community center and the water treatment plant, just to keep us aware that there were assets coming on board. So the largest share of assets in the general fund, the assets have a estimated replacement value of $69 million based on the information that was gathered. And the largest share of those assets falls in the transportation group in the general fund. The water is basically not in the general fund. The water ones are in the water fund. As part of the process, a comprehensive asset register was created and populated with all assets that could be identified as owned by BIM. Condition and risk attributes were assigned based on the best information available. So in cases where condition information was not available, condition was estimated based on age, and most condition information was based on age.
Raj, should we be on slide 2? Or?
I'm just going to go to that. So,
oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, there were 8 key performance indicators that were used to tell the story of basically the physical and financial health of our assets. So based on the available age and condition and risk information, indications are, and I'm really summarizing it up, that the majority of Bowen Island municipalities' assets are in fair to poor condition. It was indicated based on the information that was gathered, approximately 24 million in reinvestment is required over the next 10 years, which if you're smoothing that out, it's approximately 2.4 million per year average is required in terms of reinvestment in BIM assets. The conclusions of the report were that there's a large infrastructure gap, which is what we've also been talking about through just review of our reserve balances and capital requests that are coming through. And in order to maintain and in some cases restore levels of service, increased levels of funding will need to be considered. As Liam has mentioned in a previous meeting to both council and to the FAC, asset management is a journey. And so we're really at the beginning stages of our journey. And oh, sorry, before I kind of talk about the journey here, one of the items that we were able to identify, and it supports the reports that have been coming forward, was essentially this replacement prioritization graph, which came out of the data that we had, identifies assets based on, basically on the vertical axis, we have a probability of failure.
Graph are we supposed to be looking at, Raj?
You're still on the front page here.
You're still on the front
Oh,
page.
is it not, did it not change on my screen?
No, no. You've got to change it manually, probably.
I have a very small version on the left side, but I can't read it.
Okay. So I'm looking.
I don't have my binoculars.
So I've on my screen, it's showing up on my screen here. Maybe I'll unshare and share again.
Maybe you just have to scroll down.
I did scroll back and forth a couple of times. Which slide are you guys seeing?
Maybe we have to
We're
scroll.
just seeing the front page.
And we've got all the little slides down the left-hand side. Or at least I do, but I can't read them.
I do as well.
Raj, did
Oh,
you?
you know what? Oh, sorry,
you
my
started,
apologies.
you're
Okay, I think
sharing
I
the
know
wrong
what's-
screen.
Maybe I shared the wrong screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I shared the wrong screen.
There we
Thanks.
go.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Success.
Okay, from current slide here, I'll do it so that I'm in share mode. But in any event, okay. Looking at this slide, what you're seeing is actually our assets represent the size of these blue bubbles represent the size of the portfolio of each group of assets. And they've been basically put on this graph with respect to the probability of failure being on the vertical axis and the consequence of failure being on the horizontal axis. And so what this is showing here is our fleet assets are probably at highest risk of failure, and they have one of the highest consequences of failure. So that's reflecting our fire trucks. And then our sanitary assets seem to be in a similar category in terms of a high consequence of failure and a high probability of failure in comparison to, let's say, our transportation assets or our storm assets. It's just the better the information is, the better these plots will be as we move on in our journey. But it does kind of reinforce what the budget information is also saying, and that in terms of prioritizing, in terms of what staff is using or how staff are prioritizing replacement of assets.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to go on to the next slide. Sorry. So I was talking about our journey. As Liam had mentioned to council in the past, that asset management is a journey. And this illustration here shows where we're at, where we're relatively young in our journey, if I can say that. And so in terms of our KPIs or key deliverables, we're just establishing our process mapping. Our asset conditions are, as I mentioned, in fair to poor condition. Our data quality, I kind of feel it's a little bit more to the uncertain side than to the reliable side. However, I mean, it's kind of been graded in that uncertain to reliable group. And then the risk framework, where we're just establishing that, and we need to do quite a bit of work in terms of establishing a level of services framework. And in terms of on our journey, in terms of next steps, essentially, again, we've got a grid here that kind of helps us prioritize our next steps and in terms of high benefit and low benefit versus the amount of effort required to accomplish our next steps in the journey. But work required consists of, we need to cleanse and refine our data in the asset register. We need to adopt an asset management policy. We need to develop a level of service register. We need to develop a risk register and assign criticality scores to all of our assets. We need to enhance the GIS attributes and reporting out. And we also need to enhance condition data, develop an asset management strategy. We need to develop optimized maintenance programs and develop process maps. And we do have on the radar turning our attention to natural assets down the road as well. But as I've kind of said before, we really need to enhance our asset management practices on engineered assets before we move into natural assets. That's kind of the 10-minute summary on the asset management update. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We have put a provision in the budget to continue the work on asset management into 2020.
Mm-hmm. Any questions for Raj?
Timeline. You know, how much is the budget provision, and how far down the piece is it going to get us?
Again, it's I'd have to put that together, Allison. I have a rough timeline, but I don't have one for this meeting.
Yeah, I guess
And
I keep going back into files looking for things, and you know, I go back 10 years and I find, you know, that we needed to do an asset management plan. So I'm wondering if is it 2 years, 5 years? I mean, what sort of ballpark timeline are we looking
Well,
at?
it's an ongoing journey. We'll be developed. I mean, it changes as conditions change. So we'll never be finished with the asset management plan. We'll be continually refining it and adding to it. And however, I mean, I expect the lion's share of work would be done in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, if I may, just add that I also believe and would very much want to get us to the place within the next 2 years where we're starting to implement the asset management plan or asset management strategy. So, so if we were to go back to that one slide where there was showing where we were at on the different key key performance indicators, that we would actually be we'd have progressed along that continuum all to the right. So we're getting better at all these things. But again, we've already identified that we want to focus in on one asset class first. And we've chosen stormwater as that asset class to focus in on first, to get a good handle on that. And so my goal would be in the next 2 years that we're shifting all those flags to the right, but for the asset class of stormwater, we've really gone a long way. We've got a good handle on that, and we're now transferring all of that experience and knowledge to all the other asset classes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help, Councillor Morse?
Well, when you say focus on stormwater, are you meaning focusing on identifying all the, I guess it's culverts and ditches when you're talking about stormwater, and their condition, or does it also mean fixing them?
Not necessarily fixing them, but more so focusing on like what we want to do for each asset class is to come up with a really clear understanding of the what is the ideal tax rate and or fee that we would charge to provide that service, and to make sure that we're got a more sustainable charge rate so that we can renew and replace that asset over time. I don't think we're going to fix and repair all of the stormwater in the next 2 years. That's going to.
Well, I guess adding to that, what I was getting at with the stormwater one is stormwater is one of the ones that can largely be addressed by your natural assets in a way.
In part, yes.
Or natural processes. So I would be concerned that we would just say, okay, this needs to be fixed, rather than maybe we need to do a more natural process, like selling ponds and berms and all that stuff.
Right, and for us, a lot of the natural assets in the stormwater category will be constructed engineered assets, so they won't be entirely natural in their state. They'll be like an engineered construction wetlands and bioswales and terms like that.
Yeah. But bioswales are more natural and let water infiltrate back to the ground than a culvert.
Exactly, and so we would like, but we would want to be identifying, okay, well, where is a bioswale more appropriate than an actual culvert or ditch or something.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or Raj relative to that? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. Liam, if you would have any comments on capital projects update.
I don't really have much more to report than what I reported out last time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, it was just a point 6.2. So any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next point, please. The next point is point 7 and 7.1, which is the third quarter operating results and forecast to year end. Raj provided some information a few days ago relating to that report. And Raj, I'll ask you to please provide your comments.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my screen just messed up here. Just bear with me for just a quick sec. Or am I sharing? Are you guys seeing share screen? Oh, okay. So I'm going to assume that everybody read through the Q3 operating results report that I had distributed on the weekend. So I'm going to go through it at a relatively high level. So in terms of our operating expenditures are trending on budget at Q3. Operating expenditures are anticipated to be about 109,000 favorable to budget at year end. Expenditures at year end are estimated to be about $6,889,000 in comparison to a budget of $6,998,000. We're expecting to be 1.6% favorable to budget the end of the year. In terms of, I had provided a report that the variances by operating departments, and there were detailed comments provided on the anticipated variances in the report. And then in terms of our general fund capital results, the capital budget for 2020 is $6.33 million. Significant projects budgeted in 2020 include phase 1 of the multi-use path, the fire hall on Miller Road, the community center, culvert renewals at Honeymoon Creek and Miller Road, replacement of the artificial turf field, and the road maintenance program. As of the end of Q3, $266,000 in expenditures had been incurred, or $10 shy of $266,000. Variances in the actual spending to budget arise from essentially reconsideration of the scope of the phase 1 multi-use path, resulting in delays in proceeding with the project. The unspent budget for that project will be carried forward to 2021. Again, in the fire hall, there were delays in start to construction, and the unspent 2020 budget provision will be carried forward to 2021. Same explanation for the community center. There's been a delay in construction in comparison to the budget provision, so the unspent 2020 budget provision will be carried forward to 2021's budget. Culvert works, I think Liam had talked about them at the last capital meeting. Not all of the culvert works on the Miller Road culvert were completed during the fisheries window. So budget for remaining works, which will be conducted in the 2021 fisheries window, will be carried forward. And the artificial turf field, which was the last of the significant project work, was completed on that project towards the end of this summer. For any projects that are not started during the year and have no financial commitment in 2020, the budgeted funds will be returned to the reserve that they were funded from. Sorry, one of the ones I didn't talk about was the roads maintenance program. So due to vacancies in public works, there was very little work done on the maintenance program. So the unspent budget provision from the roads maintenance program for 2020 will be returned back to reserves and used to fund whatever we are doing in 2021. And I can open that up to questions. That's everything I have on the report.
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one,
Allison?
Brad. Revenue side. We're down, it's a favorable variance on expenditures, but is it a positive or negative variance on revenue that offsets?
I have to look at that, Allison. We do have a unfavorable variance in recreation services to the amount of about 70,000 that'll offset against this. Our taxation revenue is trending on budget, and building permits are slightly favorable from when I last looked. So overall, I would expect that there would be a slightly unfavorable variance in revenue that will apply against that favorable variance in expenditures. But I didn't have time in the weekend to do an analysis of the revenue as well. I will look at that.
Yeah, okay, so.
Okay.
And then because the council strategic initiatives, will we get a detail of what that is, since that's the thing that council's responsible for? It's their pot?
Yeah, I can provide a detail to council on spending on council strategic initiatives.
And I was surprised that legislative variance was as small as it was. Because basically nobody's been going anywhere for conferences, or is there stuff for COVID that's been going in there?
I don't believe any COVID stuff has been going in there. The favorable variance was mostly reflected from reductions in attendance at conferences. I mean, include the, I think there was a favorable variance. I can't remember off the
Yeah, there's a 33,000 favorable variance. But
yeah. So legislative services doesn't have a significant budget provision overall. So I would say that 33,000 favorable is a considerably favorable variance for that department.
Okay, and my curiosity killed the cat question. Under solid waste management, it seems absolutely odd to me that we're going to end up exactly on budget, because aren't we paying the tipping fees?
We are paying the tipping fees now, and again, the forecast projections were completed by the individual departments, so they were projecting to be on budget of the year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Fred, I don't have a question, but I would like to thank Raj for his work on the weekend.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
know he's management, and I know as managers, we do it frequently. I just like to make sure we say thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Raj. Okay, so moving on, there is a recommendation that comes from this report that the Financial Advisory Committee received the 2020 third quarter operating results and forecast to year-end report dated November 8th, 2020 for information. If I can have a mover and a seconder, please.
So moved.
Allison, second, Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Can you unshare your screen, please, Raj?
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to, sorry, Ed.
Great.
Actually, I can speak while it's on.
I'm trying to get my screen.
Okay, well, what I'm saying doesn't
Nice. Here.
interfere with that.
Take you off.
7.2, 2021 FAC meeting schedule. I just wanted to take a moment to provide a comment generally from my perspective as chair, but also as a committee member now for a couple of years. One of the things I've noticed is that when we try to have a few meetings, but tons of information and topics included in single meetings, that we may not always be in a position to give matters the attention and time for discussion that might be appropriate. As a general comment, just want to say is I would be in favor of maybe a couple more, maybe 1 or 2 more meetings in the year for next year, but to spread out the agendas so that we have agendas of reasonable length and meetings of reasonable timeframes that firstly both match when cycles are occurring or operating cycles are occurring within the municipality, and also to allow us to for appropriate time for discussion. So I guess my question is, are there any committee members that would have a concern if we were to ultimately schedule 1 or 2 additional meetings in the course of 2021? Michael?
Fred, no, in fact, I back you up on this. I popped also, in addition, I popped in to see Raj. He was good enough to see me on Monday because some of this information I asked for hard copies on, because I just don't seem to have the skill set to absorb all these on screens. And I bow my head with reverence to everybody, all the faces I'm looking at who can do that.
I get hard copies, Michael.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I agree with you, Fred. And also, this is one of the committees, one of the advisory committees as well, where I think it does help to have, in some instances, many in fact, where we're dealing with complex charts, the actual, for those who need it, and I'm holding up my hand, the required paperwork as well. I know we're trying to reduce it as much as we can, but I think this is one of the committees where more frequent meetings, yes, and probably enough time to give Raj a chance to get some of this more complex information out to us in paper form for those that want it.
And I think it's hopefully it would be a value to everybody, because again we can have maybe more wholesome discussion when we don't feel we have to fly through certain agenda items because there's 12 of them on the agenda. Joyce?
Since we're doing a wish list, I'd really love it if we could set the meeting schedule and stick to it. And COVID is COVID, so for now it's fine. We can change and shift, but I hold up personal plans for meetings and then they're moved, and it's very frustrating. So it would be most helpful if we could try and set a schedule and keep to it. I would appreciate it.
Okay. So I'm not looking for any motions or resolutions, just as an information. And so
that would be 6 times a year then.
Potentially 6 times a year.
Brad, one other question. Are we having any more meetings in 2020?
Sorry?
Are we having any more
Not that I'm
meetings
aware of, no.
here? Because
I believe this would be it.
given the volume of information, yeah, we might need another one.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But right now we haven't scheduled that, and we will we'll look at that if it needs to be addressed. But I think, as I said, our conversation really is around 2021, and so preparation of a schedule will be based on both reasonable timing and also, as I say, to fit the operating cycles and things coming from the municipality to fit those requirements. And as I said, I appreciate the fact that sometimes it seems like we're it doesn't have to always be sort of last minute and stuff like that. Because I think I come back to the point that we'd really like, in a normal environment, if there is such a thing, that we have reporting information a week ahead of the meeting. And if we can schedule that up through a broader range of, say, 6 meetings, that may be possible. That's all. I wasn't adding anything else to that. Is that okay?
What about time for the meetings?
Pardon me?
Start time.
I personally don't, it doesn't really impact me, but there may be others. And I know, I think, Rob, you were probably one that was.
Yeah,
4:30
usually works good for me. Yeah.
But also for staff, like Steph, who normally is heading home at 4:30 probably, or 5.
No, don't worry about me.
Okay. I don't have any issues with it. I think.
Well, I was wondering if starting at 7 might be better and going till 9 or something, or
Uh-oh.
Yeah, whether we'd be better
I've
to,
seen a
Don't worry
reaction.
about me, worry about me.
That don't feel that might be something that anybody wants to do. Like, I'm okay. I'm whatever the wish of the committee is. And
okay, well,
think
that's
financial-
fine. I'll stick with 4:30 to 6:30.
Yeah, we were previously doing it at 4. Was that only because I think Rob had to come from North Van or something?
Yeah, 4:15 works. The ferry changes a bit throughout the year.
So let's just leave it at
4:30
4:30 for the
is
time
safe one.
being.
So can I make an action item then for Fred and Raj or Aoife to work together to create a 2021 schedule based on the things you know about finance?
Yeah, and I think we've also got a schedule of things that we do that have been designated by quarter, which we can include with
Yeah.
that as well. So I think that's fine. Everybody good?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, 7.3, move to a closed meeting. I don't know if you want me to read this or not.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Could you please?
Do you need to read it? Oh, because of, okay. Okay.
At least the first paragraph.
All right, I'll do that. Recommendation that the Financial Advisory Committee move to a closed meeting pursuant to section 90.1K of the Community Charter, meetings that may or must be closed to the public. 90.1, which defines a part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following. And next point is K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at the preliminary stages and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. So that is the recommendation. A mover and seconder, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Allison, seconder. Joyce, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And point 8 is informational items. I don't think we have anything there.
No.
List of council highlights, I don't know. And I think that next meeting, we don't know at this point, there'll be that this will be prepared. And so do we adjourn, Steph?
Yeah, do you want to just take 2 minutes to take a breather while I,
So do we log in again at a closed
no,
meeting?
stay on. I just need to make sure that, Kimmy, are you there? No, I have to
Can you remove her?